Hello and welcome to this GCSE Science Additional Biology revision video on cells, tissues and organs. In this video we will be covering plant, animal, bacteria and yeast cells, specialised cells, diffusion and the digestive system. Animal cells and plant cells have many common features such as a nucleus, cytoplasm, cell membrane, mitochondria and ribosomes. However, plant cells and algal cells also have cell walls and chloroplasts and a permanent vacuole. Bacteria and yeast cells have different structures depending on their type. In cells, the nucleus contains the genetic information and controls cell activity. Cytoplasm is where chemical reactions take place in the cell. The cell membrane controls movement of substances in and out of the cell. In the mitochondria, energy is released by respiration and the ribosomes carry out protein synthesis. In plants, there are a few other different organelles that you need to know about. These are the cell wall, which strengthens the cell, chloroplasts, which contain chlorophyll. These absorb sunlight and carry out photosynthesis, and a permanent vacuole filled with cell sap that is needed to keep the cell turgid. Turgid just means keeping it rigid and strong. The diagram to the right hand side shows the plant cell and an animal cell. In the exam you may need to label parts of these, so it's worth knowing their key features. Bacterium is a single-celled organism. A bacterial cell has a different structure to an animal and plant cell. It has cytoplasm, a membrane surrounded by a cell wall. However, it does not have a nucleus. It just has a small ring of DNA called a plasmid, and in some cases some delocalized DNA. In some bacteria it might also have a flagellum, which is a tail which allows it to swim. Yeast is a single-celled organism. Like bacterial cells, yeast have cytoplasm and a membrane surrounded by a cell wall, but unlike bacterial cells, yeast has a nucleus. Yeast cells also have the other main organelles such as mitochondria. Within your exam, you may be asked about specialised cells. A specialised cell is a cell which is adapted to carry out a specific job. There are a few main types that you might be asked about. Red blood cells carry oxygen in the blood. They are adapted to this by having a biconcave shape. This allows it to have a large surface area. They contain the protein hemoglobin, which absorbs oxygen, and they have no nucleus, which allows for a greater amount of hemoglobin to be forced into the cell. Nerve cells carry nerve impulses around the body. They are adapted by being long and by having specialised parts which enable them to carry electrical signals. Female egg cells can grow into a fetus. Their main adaptation that allows for this is that they contain a large amount of cytoplasm and other nutrients in order for it to grow. Sperm cells have a long tail which allow for swimming and a head which contains an enzyme which allows it to bore into a female egg cell. Both of these sex cells are adapted by only having half the amount of genetic material. So for instance, in a normal cell you may have 46 chromosomes, whereas in a sex cell you will only have 23 chromosomes. In plants, a specialised cell that absorbs water and minerals is a root hair cell. Root hair cells have a large surface area. In a plant, the palisade cell or a leaf cell absorbs lots of sunlight, it has lots of chloroplast, so carries out lots of photosynthesis. Animal cells and plant cells can form tissues like muscle. A living tissue is made up of a group of cells with a similar structure and function, which all work together to do a particular job. Some examples of tissues are muscle, the lining of the small intestines, which is villi tissue, the lining of the lung tissue lines, phloem that carries glucose around plants, a root hair tissue which absorbs water and minerals in plants' root. So muscular tissue is there to contract. As it contracts, it brings about movement. Glandular tissue produces substances such as enzymes and hormones. And epithelial tissue covers some parts of the body. In plants, epidermal tissue covers the plant, mesophyll tissue carries out photosynthesis, and xylem and phloem tissue transport the substances around the plant. An organ is made up of a group of different tissues that all work together to do a particular job. Some examples are the heart, lungs, stomach, brain, leaf and roots in plants. An organ system is a collection of organs which work together to carry out a particular job. So for instance, the circulatory system, or digestive system, or reproductive system. Living organisms need substances to be able to move in and out of them in order to survive. The most simple way of doing this is by diffusion. Diffusion is a process in which material spreads through a liquid or a gas. It is the overall movement of a substance from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. It happens because of random movements of individual particles. Diffusion is important in living things as it explains how useful materials and waste products can move in and out of cells. Diffusion gives the effect that the substance is moving from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration down a concentration gradient. The main organ system that you will be asked about is the digestive system. Digestion is the breakdown of large molecules into smaller soluble molecules so they can be absorbed into the body. Digestion happens inside the gut and relies on enzymes. The first stage is that food enters the body through the mouth. In the mouth, the food is ground up by the teeth. This increases its surface area. The salivary gland produces saliva, which lubricates the food and contains the enzyme amylase. This enzyme breaks down carbohydrates into simple sugars. The food then moves down the esophagus by the process of peristalsis. Peristalsis involves the contraction of rings and muscles, so forces the food down towards the stomach. Once the food enters the stomach, it is mechanically broken down by contractions by the stomach wall. The stomach also produces gastric juices. Gastric juices contain hydrochloric acid, which lowers the pH, and the enzyme pepsin. The enzyme pepsin breaks down proteins into amino acids. The gastric juices in the stomach are produced by gastric pits, which contain goblet cells. After the stomach, the food enters the duodenum. In the duodenum, the pH of the food needs to be raised so that it does not damage the small intestines. The gallbladder stores bile produced in the liver. Bile has two main jobs. When mixed with the food, it raises the pH back to pH 7 and it also emulsifies it. By emulsifying it, it breaks up the fat into smaller particles so that they increase the surface area and can be broken down more easily. At the same time, the pancreas produces 3 enzymes. The enzymes it produces is a carbohydrate, a protease, and a lipase, which help break down substances within the food. After the stomach, the food travels into the small intestines. The enzymes in the small intestines work best at slightly alkali conditions. In the small intestines, there are special adaptations which allow the nutrients to be absorbed into the blood. The walls of the small intestines are covered with villi. Villi have a very large surface area, so it allows the movement of nutrients into the blood down a concentration gradient quickly. This is also helped by the fact that the villi have a good blood supply, which helps maintain the concentration gradient. In the large intestines, excess water is reabsorbed before the feces collects in the rectum. So remember, when revising, turn off distractions, keep asking yourself questions, use flashcards. Quality revision is better than quantity revision. Please follow the link below for a summary sheet that accompanies this video, and have a look at the other videos covering other areas of the additional biology exam. Good luck.